All right. Not ideal. All right. Do I sound any better there? Hated to do that. Hope that worked. We'll wait for some people to trickle in. All right. You can hear me? Great. Sorry about that. I don't always have my microphone plugged in during the day. So, yeah. Now we're probably not hearing the microphone through the headphones or something. Sorry about that. I do not know what I was talking about. Probably about the getting the everybody getting their victory sabers. It looked pretty cool that everybody was getting those this week. I haven't got a Hasbro Pulse item yet. The Hiss tank will be my first one, and it'll probably go over here. Is what I was saying before I realized you couldn't hear anything. So, I am Aaron Archer. This is the Toy Armada Live Friday night hang. I am a 20 plus year veteran of the toy design franchise development game. And I talk a little bit about a random topic for about 15, 20 minutes every week, hopefully, and then just usually talk about toys in general and questions about Transformers mostly. So that's what we're doing tonight. How's everybody doing? Thanks for coming back. Ninjatron, good to see you. Van Hope Comedy, how you doing? Cheesier. How's everybody doing? T-Formers 2002. Thanks for putting up with the late night one. Got a whole gang. So I'll just start. I figured I'd randomly talk about ratioing and how toy lines get crafted. Because it seems often that it's like an art, but it's really just fake mumbo jumbo most of the time, if you ask me. But over the years, if you go back to the 90s, 2000s, a lot of toy lines would have a very high weight on a hero character in the not only the shipper box, but the ratio of items made. It wasn't very even. So in my era, back in the mid 90s, let's go back in time, on Batman, and I we would do probably 6 to 8 Batman for every 2 or 3 Robins to every 1 or 2 villains. So that's why you will always see so many more Batman characters than you do ever find at a garage sale or wherever. Um, the there's just so many more of them. For whatever reason, the idea that you would do complete sets is even kind of rare. I remember finding it very odd in some of the early Marvel Build-A-Figures that they weren't ratioed evenly. So even if you could certainly get. Wow, what's that fuzz right there? Is that on my camera? Must be on my camera. You couldn't quite get you could get a full set, but then there were extra guys. So if it got off balance, you had a tough time building some of those early Build-A-Figures, I would imagine, um, because that was still an era where they're building the line hero heavy, or when I say hero, the main character whatever they perceive as the main character. Some, in my case, Batman over Robin, or Captain America over some tier 2 or 3 character on that scale. You know, you're going to see a lot more Luke Skywalkers than you are Jawas, right? And then that proliferates down into then how many a toy company is going to make in the actual shipper cases, in the ratioing. So you really had a tough time in the 90s finding villains, finding the female characters, finding maybe the weird awkward friend character or wizard, sage giver, sage advice giver kind of characters. Those were even tough to find, even though they were usually very important to a story. Yoda, for instance, but you couldn't always find the characters you wanted. And then they had the added problem of they would overdo the villain versus a variety of villains, and certainly Batman was guilty of this. You know, there were way more Jokers than there were of any other villain, and they only made 1 or 2, maybe just 2 Penguins, you know, a handful of Two-Faces. You know, I made Ra's al Ghul, so there was only a handful, if only 1, at Kenner at that time. So it really wasn't distributed evenly in the development and or the shipper cases. And the logic goes that mom or the person in control of the money, which most of the time in my time in toys, it was the mother making the emotional decisions about what the gatekeeper kind of role, and they would ask for you know, certain characters made it easy for moms to see what they wanted to get. So that is to say, it was easy to go, okay, I know Junior has a green one and a yellow one and a gray one. I'll get this gold one. I know it doesn't have the gold one. So that's why the variety of colors in a Batman line would be the way they were. Because if they were all gray and black, then even that ratioing breaks down. But then it was like the Joker at least was kind of a colorful character and bright versus a murderer or kind of a darker character. So, and then even in some parts of certain countries, or even our own, you know, some characters like a Man-Bat would be seen as demonic. So you would maybe not revisit some of those characters again, like a Man-Bat. So that made it very hard to kind of be a completist too. It was really a challenge, I would think, to have been trying to be a completist back in the 90s or early 2000s. And that's the belief that more kids are going to want to play the hero and then maybe the sidekick or have a sidekick than they'll ever want to be the villain. Over time, it's more about, I think, collection building than storytelling and reenactment. So I think it's evened out a little bit or a lot as far as that goes with more of the replica toy world we're living in. So versus still trying to hit kids market that I was in. So that's a little bit of what I was thinking I'd talk about. Those are some generalities about how lines got created when I was working on them. Sorry, I'm reading some of these. I can't read very fast, or I'm gonna have to put my glasses on. Everyone, hey Evan, how you doing? Yeah, it was tough. It was tough to do interesting characters sometimes in these lines, or secondary characters even. Like I didn't even get to do Nightwing too often um, back in those days because it just was seen as a risk. That why would kids want the sidekick or the old man in suit characters like Alfred or things like that? It was just seen as a risk and not what little boys wanted. So that that made marketing risk averse and front loaded everything. So yeah, Ninjatron. Just to keep on topic, everybody. Yeah, it was very frustrating. I remember the earliest interactions I had with fans about my products was at San Diego Comic Con, where I would take Batman products and things, and some of the early Hasbro interactions at Comic Cons were just small booths, and that was the big complaint then with the growing group of 20 somethings willing to talk about it, going, hey man, I want to get the full collection. How is it that I can never find? Usually the animated Batman the animated series was the hunt at that time. I can't find Mr. Freeze, or how come I can't find this character, or will you make this character? Particularly Alfred or something like that. Commissioner Gordon. I want to complete the world. Why can't you guys complete the world? And that was probably the early days of the wherever we are now, where you have a complete collection, open box. It's kind of the world shelf, and you can have multiple shelves of the different worlds. But back then, it was really tough to find the villains, and then so as a result, those villains were lesser in the case back, which means they were rarer, which meant the early days of the scalping and hoarding and all the stuff that is well known about hanging out with the guys in the back shop, the stock room, getting early access and all that. So the villains sometimes wouldn't even make it to the floor because they knew there was only one per case or whatnot, which was a definite problem at that time. Um, Woe is that if that were my only problems that I ever dealt with. That seems kind of quaint by other things like we could get into. See, I think the GI Joe of the '80s was more fairly distributed. You could get the villains somewhat easier, whether it was not the villains you wanted. Granted, um, that's what I felt anyway. Yeah, the fandom was definitely changing. Um, you know, McFarlane came in. I think that made it feel as if it was a more serious collecting habit. Um, there was enough stuff that resonated: Turtles, Power Rangers, Batman, and a lot of others that I think started people long term collecting. Star Wars came back. People wanted to go get the old stuff. It's interesting how it all feeds on itself, inspires itself. Yeah, I have my cat in the background there. I still can't figure out what that fuzz is right there. It's a reflection or some sort. Anyway, oh, no. Anyway, um, Batman was a fun one. I'll talk more about that on the long form ones of the Toy Armada. Um, just to give everybody a little preview, there's 14 of us here. Daniel and I did record a new long form podcast recently. So he is working on the edit of that. I will not spill the beans on what it is and what it's about, but it's a fun one and kind of an obscure one, but I think one that everybody's waiting to hear more about. So more to come on that. But we'll get that out a little, maybe before we know it. We'll see. Yeah, G.I. Joe and Transformers operate slightly different than most toy lines, that you can get away with a more even balance of villains. It was one of the best things I could throw out at these presentations that we would give to either Hollywood or video game partners or whatnot, is that Transformers is one of the few lines that operates where as many villains are sold as heroes, and the lines are pretty well balanced, and people either like both or they like one or the other, but there's excitement for both sides. And GI Joe is very similar in that regard. I think people identify somehow, right, with what you like. So those two brands stand unique, and I think that's why they are largely successful, because there is no fat on the bone. It's all really good stuff to get excited about, and it's worth investing in the villains on both those properties. So they do benefit. And let's see, I'm looking for anything here that relates to the ratioing and how lines get created, which made it really tricky on Batman, particularly where, you're coming up with like 5 Batman ideas for every 2 or Robin, ideas. So you kind of, you exhaust a lot of Batman ideas, and there's only so many. I mean, I say this humbly, and I love the challenge of the 200th or 300th or 400th Batman, but um you know you get tired of trying to figure out scallops and capes and backpack ideas. You might want some, like the Flash, where you can do something with legs and a different part of something. um so even the designers, you wish there was more variety, because you're burning through whatever the idea is. So, if I look at Star Wars, there's a lot of Luke Skywalkers in different outfits, but in different scenes, I should say. Um, but I'm sure there's somebody who's neglected that people also want, and you're like, yeah, can't we get more? Ooh, do I have a favorite incarnation of GI Joe? Yeah, talk about that one day. But I'm a 80s 82 kid for sure. Yeah, later in the line, Batman was put onto a group that would kind of they operated kind of like an internal they kind of did operate like an internal ninja team, no pun intended, that they could get different costing, and they got more efficient sculpting, and the stuff they made was picked up by the retailer in Hong Kong, so there was no shipping cost. They just added it to the stuff they were already buying. Um, so they could offer at different price points, which meant they could do these special things like throw a Commissioner Gordon in, and I think they did a Batgirl and a unique Alfred at some point in the animated style, in those multi packs, and that's how they were able to get away with that newness. Whereas if you had to run it through the full corporate costing and ratioing and, you know, value per mold, dot, 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 it just wouldn't, the math wouldn't play out. So this other team kind of had this unique ability to do that. Excuse me. Villains often come down to the main villain and the popularity around that villain, and kind of in Batman particularly, and I'll keep sticking with that tonight, I guess. It came down to the ideas around the Batman that we wanted to do. So if it was Poison Ivy, you'd want it gear for Batman that cut vines or camouflaged, or something related to what she can do, or ice, antifreeze, or armor, or heat rays because you're fighting Mr. Freeze, or flight capabilities because you're fighting Man Bat. Different. So it gave us different ways to look at the toys, and that's how we would pick the villains, often based on that or some unique variety of silhouette. Like, well, we did a green one last time, so we'll do a different color villain this time. It can be as simple as that. Yeah, those multi-packs were definitely redeco heavy, except for that new character. Hopefully you got new colors, but for the Batman animated line and the movie lines early on, Returns and whatnot, they reused a lot of the same sculpts for a long time. So you get to go pick your favorite color, I guess, of the Batman animated rainbow of colors. So once again, we got 16 or so people here. That's not too bad for a 12:30. Thanks for staying up late with me. Join the conversation. It's like we're at a TF con, isn't it? All right, Sean, that was a good question. Yeah, I had input in the development of the Transformers Armada video game back in 04. We had let them have access to what we were doing, and they found a mechanic in the mini cons that they could use. And so yeah, I had a lot of input into what we gave them and what we were trying to do at the time, and then they made a game out of that. And I'm not a gamer to the point where I commented on that aspect of the product, but just how they were treating the designs and the characters, colors, stuff like that. But I'm only so good at games, so I never made it past the Starscream in the hangar. So, and another thing, everybody had their favorite, I guess villains or characters that we had hoped to do. If you were on a line long enough and you'd keep pitching it, and so that would happen too. So sometimes villains would get in because someone was always on or repitching a model maybe of a particular villain. Oh, okay, finally we'll do that. So that you need the Penguin to do that. So that's another way villains would creep in. Everybody would have their favorite that they'd kind of pitch. I pitched Ra's al Ghul. I don't know. I kind of liked Ra's al Ghul at the time, but then they made me create the armor look, to make him a little less an old man in a green suit, and more in a warrior version of Ra's al Ghul. I don't know how successful that was, and then they vacuum formed it to the back of the blister, which made a yellow figure look pretty scant on a yellow background. So unfortunately that guy we've all seen on the pegs, but that is my baby, animated Ra's al Ghul. Ninjatron, no, we didn't pitch it. I think that group might have made her, or someone eventually made her. I don't know if maybe it was DC. I can't recall. I know I didn't make Zatanna at the time. Pitching pitching characters that weren't big in animation or movies or on covers of comic books at the time, they were still relevant, was very difficult. Management wasn't into it, so they really went with by the numbers, popularity, usage, next big thing. Um, so that made it tough. It made it tough to, like, we really had to push to get Harley Quinn made, because she was new. It was a female. She was a sidekick to the Joker as far as management was concerned. You know, it was kind of a weird thing for a boys kid toy line, but we'll tell the full story one day of how it got made. But um, ultimately, we did get her made, and that was good. But that was effort. We really had to prove that she was worth it, and so it wasn't as easy as just, no, we're going to do this guy next, and off we went. Um, the early days, management really had a lockdown on those kinds of choices, and largely based on color, historical uh, precedent. If things didn't sell at some point in superpowers back in the 80s, that would still come up in the 90s as a problem, you know. So crazy. Um, some management had long memories for what I would consider now, and my friends and I talk about, as dumb stuff. Like, why does that matter? You know? So we'd have to hear it every time. Um, Somebody's thoughts on the color green or whatnot. Did moms play a big part in the purchasing power of Transformers? Often, in a way, they did, but more in the fact that Transformers was always mom approved, because of that play pattern, and because it, had this perception that it came from Japan. It it kind of had a premium perception within parents' minds. So having a Transformer was always, um, parents were always open to that. Whereas, Ghost Rider, you can imagine, might be a different proposition. Um, do I want a flaming Death Skull biker demon in the house? I don't know. Probably not. If I'm, just thinking it that way. But a puzzle that turns from a robot to a car, oh, that's great. Yeah, dexterity, problem solving skills, speed challenge, two toys in one, part of a bigger world. There's a lot of value to a Transformer, to a parent in that regard. Uh, so there you go. That was a good question. Modern Toy Fair. Yeah, they could slice Batman down to, I mean, Batman is the star of the show, so they wanted to focus on that. And they paid a lot of money for that, right? So I can see that point too. So we own Transformers. We made a big deal out of all of them. Um, Man, everything's going by pretty fast. Sorry, folks. I don't read as fast as I could. If you really want to get my attention, bold it up, I guess. But yeah, Omega Sentinel, in Energon, I think, was supposed to be in the story at some point. We created the story, whether or not it was going to show up, we just didn't know where, but it was always part of the plan, that storyline, for Omega Sentinel to appear in Energon. It just didn't materialize, really. Sadly, we pit. There's a question here: did we ever think about a crossover between Batman and Transformers. When I was doing Transformers, we did pitch a line of popular culture cars. So, what kind of what they're doing now, the DeLorean, the Ecto One, things like that. And I think we would often have Speed Racer and a Batmobile thing, and it was also the time we were doing the Star Wars Transformers. So it was a natural progression to look at what other popular culture vehicles could be turned into transforming robots of some sort. So we looked at all of it, but it didn't go very far, to be honest, or it went as far as you've seen. So yeah. There's only so many. I mean, there are so many good ideas, and they do come back around, and the correct time, like a key and a lock. What I often say, what is yesterday's wrong idea will be tomorrow's correct idea, or answer. So it is timing. So that is true. Do I have anything to say about the Power Core combiners? No, I was kind of off in movie world when that stuff was being developed. So Eric is going to have to talk on that one. Alternator Decepticharge. Is that the yellow convertible? I don't remember which one that is. Sorry. Yeah, the Beast Wars Bat Optimus Primal. That was developed in Rhode Island before it moved to Cincinnati. So no connection there. Although years later, Night Scream, is that the character's name? There may have been value in the idea that let's do a big Bat character, because Kenner was Bat heavy. Batman was a big part of what Kenner was about, Boys Toys wise, and celebrated and successful. So Bat related things were kind of probably going to be beneficial to selling them into that tough management who was looking to ride off popularity and trends and things they could bank on. Very risk averse, I would say, most of the time. At different points, very risk averse. No, I saw, Sean, I saw something about the new trailer for the game, but I have not seen it yet. Hello, everybody. This is Jiro. So, yeah. All right. So we're doing not too bad. Everybody enjoying the late night. Thanks for sticking around. Yep. This is my second Siamese. So I had an Ichiban, and this is Jiro. Yeah. So I am a fancy cat guy. Do you know who designed Energon Starscream, having his face being broken on one side? I did Energon Starscream. That was the nature of all the Decepticons in Energon, is they all had that kind of break open weapons secret, and a lot of them had, I don't know, I kind of went back to Fusors or something, like they kind of, a lot of them had messed up parts, but no real reason other than that. Just trying different things. I don't know. I was always willing to push the edges on that stuff, see what else could happen, especially on characters like Starscream. I tell the story that I often wanted. We pitched it for what would have become animated, but the name Starscream, I want to manifest that somehow. I wanted him to like unlock his jaw and shoot some sort of cosmic beam, um, and have a star scream. Would be pretty cool. I still think of that. Um, make more sense for him to have that kind of feature. And we've turned into a cat podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. If you are interested in the shelves behind me there, Evan, check out my Instagram. I did some reels this week on what is on my various shelves because everybody's been asking and wanting to kind of know what's back there, kind of trying to detect it out depending on the quality of my camera and your monitors, I suppose. So, yes, that is the bug from Toy Story. I just like the idea that they made a new He-Man character at the time, so I had to get that bug. And my local vintage toy store has one that I'm thinking about buying a second one because it's open and loose and cheap enough that sounds fun. Yeah, that's something I did on Transformers a lot, was to try to leverage their names if I could, or was there power in those names to reinvent them a little bit. Starscream, was one that really bugged me often, and why we put, Soundwave obviously had the tape recorder, but why we started making it like a thumper van with speakers and stuff, and his power to kind of vibrate things with the sound waves, became more manifest around that same time, for those same reasons. Yeah. Yes. So we definitely have turned into a cat podcast. So, star of the show. Everybody say hello. Hey. Sometimes in the long forms, you hear the purring, or in the past episodes, we've heard the purring. That's who this guy is. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's around the same time we got back to the stingers on Bumblebee and put it in animated, and he started getting those on his forearms for that same kind of reason. How can we play up this name and make that connective tissue a little stronger between the name and what the character does, to reinforce character type and role and that kind of thing. So Bumblebee was definitely one of those. What was the thought process of Autobot Laserbeak? Help me with that one. Chaotic Neutral Armada Laserbeak. I could speak to that one. Which I assume you mean by Autobot Laserbeak. That was a time, if we're talking about the Armada Laserbeak, we knew we wanted to make that type of product, and some sort of bird was the natural ability. We wanted it to be able to fly and get a view from above and different things. That was a time where I didn't all the names were assets to me. I didn't really drag along any baggage or knowledge, I guess I should say, or honor with what had come before, because we didn't really internally think in terms of uh, there still being fans or some sort of storyline that was still living or had our that could continue on. We were rebuilding it as if this was a brand new launch, and so I use names interchangeably and incorrectly, um, whether it's by allegiance or type of vehicle or any number of things, because we liked the name for what we were doing, um, not really being any kind of referential to that original usage of the name. So we changed that along the way. So Laserbeak definitely fell into that, where we named it Laserbeak because it was a great name, but totally different usage than G1. And the way I used to get away with saying it, and I don't know, this is kind of cheeky, but you know, there's more than one Aaron in the world, so to my mind, there's more than one Laserbeak on Cybertron. Kind of a cop out, but that helped me sleep at night, I guess. So that is how the story of Armada Laserbeak came to be. I hope that's an interesting story. I take it all seriously, Ninja. I take it all seriously. Yeah, the yellow Armada Laserbeak. Yeah, so that's kind of how he came to be. He's an interesting little guy. I put him in the same category as the, I don't know, the goofy characters that you have in the original Clash of the Titans, or even some of the Michael Bay movies. You know, just the weird kind of robot character. Which of the three hotshots, Armada, Energon, Cybertron, were your favorite design? Well, Energon's compromised because of the combo feature. We can all agree on that. So he doesn't win because he's got the weird head and everything. Armada, fun character, rough toy. So it's been a minute since I've reviewed the Cybertron one, though. So I don't know. Hopefully Cybertron. But I also think, looking back, we would have progressed those designs a little more smoothly. We kept the names going, but the designs were really herky jerky, right? So unfortunate looking back that way. Yeah, Cybertron Soundwave as a bomber jet. Let's see here. I'm going to look that one up. Trigger my mind a little bit. Bear with me. That's not what I wanted. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The progression between the different series. You got to think of. I'm going to go off on one here, Ninja, because you asked. You know, why was Hot Shot Blue and Cybertron? It's like a constant wheel of tumblers that are being spun, that are trying to find a variety of allegiances, a variety of shapes, so vehicle type, uh, a a kind of historic character or new character. That's all the decider, and color. So color feeds into that. Scale feeds into that. A lot of different things, and you get caught up internally working on these brands with what you've already done, and you kind of keep going and spinning, going down the road, going down the road. And at the time, I'm sure we didn't need another yellow car, or we knew a hot Bumblebee from Cypress Classics was coming out or something. And you make internal decisions because they're the right decisions internally to make because you're pulling the right levers. But when you look away a couple years later, or from, maybe a collector point of view, it's like, why would they do that? Why would they make Hotshot blue? That doesn't make any sense. He's a yellow character. Like, maybe blue stripes, but what? What are you guys doing? And I guarantee you it was all a set of internal discussions and needs based on those tumblers at the time. Like, oh, we already had a yellow car. Oh, we already had a sports car. Let's do something even more radical, or ... And you get caught up in your own BS a lot of the time, because you're selling all the time to the same people. So you can't go back and kind of resell something you've already sold once it was the right way to do it. You're always just, well, this is what we got to do, which is unfortunate. It's the nature of running constantly while you're trying to build the car while you're racing it. You don't always lock everything down that you wish you did, or you're looking back, you're like, oh, that would have been a lot more comfortable if. So that's a reality right there. So I hope that diatribe made sense there, from the simple question of, then why was Hotshot blue? Was it true that there were disagreements with the Transformers Prime team over the Hasbro booklet made for the show? I don't know what booklet we're talking about. I don't remember any disagreements. I remember them having a tough time, I guess, realizing that they only controlled the show, and there was this whole other enterprise of publishing and potential video games and things that copy on packages that they didn't have full access to or control of, I guess, in their minds. So that might have been a frustration, but I don't recall any outward problems. Yeah, Ninjatron. I think you're right. I'm glad you felt that way. I wish it was organically thought through, that guaranteed that happened. You know, that's all. I don't know that much thought was put into that to make him aging up. You know, which does remind me of, like, Lightning McQueen getting the blue paint job at the end of the third movie. That you could have done something, I don't know, interesting like that. The Transformers Bible that cost uh yeah, I don't know. It was two different goals crossing at the same place at the same time. So we were trying to do an aligned continuity. They were charged with trying to launch a network, not worry about aligned continuity. So we tried our best to match them up, and we just went from there. So it was what it was. But yeah, it was quite a project to try to bring focus onto all the assets of the Transformers brand, and then how they could be possibly used. So it was a big project, big research project, very cool project to be a part of. But sometimes it doesn't leave any room for organic growth or natural progression of what a story could go if you didn't have all this extra stuff that you're trying to match up, and somehow these breadcrumbs are getting you different places. It's just a different style of writing. Not everybody wants to do that. So I understand that too. Did you design any human characters? No, I did not. Remember there was a world premiere of the Transformers Prime Season 3 at Universal City. Oh. Yeah, they did a lot of stuff over there. All right. I'm going to probably go another 5-10 minutes. If I haven't answered any questions for us night owls here, hit me up again because everything's flying by pretty fast. Again, welcome to my creative dungeon where I keep all my fun stuff. I'm Aaron Archer, and I am the host of the Toy Armada, often with Proto Man, but on the lives on Friday nights that we do, we just talk random topics and then general toy discussion, mostly Transformers, obviously. So check out Archermonster_creative on Instagram if you want to also see more of my creative work and whatnot. Like and subscribe. Thank you. And appreciate everybody being here tonight. I thought Classics Generations was a great idea for older fan collectors. Well, that's exactly what it set out to do. Kind of, if you remembered the 80s, a lot had progressed from the time of G1 proper, its original landing, to when the Michael Bay next big splash was going to happen to the world of, with knowing Transformers. So we thought it would be good to rekindle some old emotional magic. We had already brought out the reissued things at Toys R Us. So we couldn't quite do that again, but we thought it would be fun to bring the modern toy technology, the articulation, transformation, and reinterpret some of those classic characters in a way that if I had seen the trailer for the new movie and I was talking to my buddies going, "Oh man, you remember those? You remember that yellow car as a kid?" Not for the super fans that I was meeting at BotCons and stuff, but like just someone that left it naturally when they were a young person and hadn't thought about it too much, but the movie trailer rekindled their interest. They went to the store and maybe they bought the reissue stuff. That's great. Definitely a direct connection to childhood, but this classics thing could let kids buy into what they used to be in their vernacular, and let older fans have something new to play with and try out as then this movie wave would be coming. And that's kind of what classics was meant to do, kind of rekindle the emotions of what had come before. Yeah, the High Moon games were part of the Align continuity, so that was the most tangible expression outside of the Covenant book of what the Align continuity is. So that made the High Moon game kind of fun for me. Older Beast Wars transmetal molds were made into Armada. Did you have a say in which molds were reused? We got a list of the molds available, which meant they were still in Hong Kong, viable, which meant they didn't need a lot of refurbishing. All the parts were there and available. They weren't being used for any other purpose or need. So go ahead and have at it. And we picked a few Armada or Beast Wars characters to put into that Armada, and then Transformers universe, I think, as well, from those kinds of lists. Every year we would get lists of all the things in storage and being held in different facilities, and what did we want to do with it, and choices about what would be, paid for more storage for another year or so, or what would be recycled, or could be whatever, uh, how otherwise deployed, no longer needed kind of thing. So we would look at the lists of those old toys and often make choices about, oh, those we could use those for BotCon exclusives or store exclusives, or whatever. Robot Masters coming to the US. That was Takara's line of kind of deluxe scaled robots, if I remember correctly, right? No, that was kind of another line they made on their own to their specs, and they had a couple redecos. The Jets were in there, I believe. They were a different price than ours, and they didn't quite fit our play pattern. So that was an issue, that why we couldn't bring them over. Yeah, yeah. They were smaller than what we were offering, but more expensive than what we were offering because they had a lot more articulation and paint and everything. So they were really difficult for Hasbro to consider bringing over. Yeah, I'm looking at them here. And that was a weird time too. Takara was trying to figure out what value they had in the brand as well. So we were both trying to figure out where the nostalgia points were, I think, in that effort. Do I find it ironic that G2? No, I believe in. I mean, I do for me, because I stayed away from G2. But there is a cycle of all these trends and colors and shapes and art styles. And I knew I was in the valley of G2. That was not a peak for me. That was coming. And when John Warden took over, that was the appropriate place for that. Because it would have just been the wrong color style for what was happening in the big trend movers of color. And that's a really nerdy way to say that. But I was a guy who was like against it when people wanted to bring it back. So Skylinks and different things I'm on the record about, because it was totally the wrong time to bring it back. Now that it has been the right time, I'm fine with G2 stuff having been made. I'm not anti G2, but it just wasn't during my time. All right. Well, it's about 5 after. I'm sure everybody wants to go to bed. I got one more here. If I could return to the brand and do anything, what would you want to take the series now? Oof, that's a big question. I'd have to know what the business plan was and where things are working and where they're not working, and then I make a plan from that. Usually is how I go for it. Prime Skyquake. No, we didn't work on that one. I mean, we worked on it, but not much. All right, everybody. It's past 1. It's getting late. Thanks for visiting with me tonight, and hope we enjoyed the conversation. And we'll do it again next Friday. And again, we recorded a new long form version this past week, and that will be up before too long. All right, everybody. I'll see you the next time. Thanks.